Did you know that Calgary has a vibrant cottage country community? Yes, it's not just about Canmore and Banff for those weekend warriors. People are traveling 2, 3, 4 hours down into the Columbia Valley to have a second home, home away from home, or perhaps they're thinking of relocating for a little R&R. Whatever the case may be, the Columbia Valley, I'm talking Golden, Invermere, Radium, Fairmont, Panorama, that quadrant. You can still go a little further down to Kimberley. Yes, there's a lot of vacation property in Kimberley, but the focus today is about that little valley between Radium and Fairmont Hot Springs. What's happening? What's trending? Are people still buying? Well, this past summer saw a kind of strange pattern, but it was the same holding pattern that Calgary was in. People weren't buying. They were looking. There was properties for sale, but they weren't buying. And then in the fall, a few people ended up buying that had been sitting on the fence. And now with the wintertime coming, that'll also continue the buying spree until well into January. That cycle is completely predictable in the Columbia Valley. But the weird thing is that people didn't really buy like they normally would in the summertime. Now, third quarter results are out from Canadian Real Estate Association about that valley. The number one location people are searching is Windermere, not Invermere. Invermere is number two. It's still up there in the numbers, don't get me wrong. But Windermere is number one. Then Invermere rural. And what that means is if they're not in the proper town of Invermere, but they're still considered along that area between Invermere and Windermere, for example. Next is a blanket scope, so no particular interest. After that is Radium Hot Springs, and then Fairmont Hot Springs. And those hot springs, they are an attraction. And I've been going to Radium Hot Springs since I could, walk, I think. My dad swears by it. He says it cured his arthritis. Loves the hot springs. And actually, that's on a side note, there's lots of hot springs out there. There's also natural hot springs that you can visit in Lucier Falls. So keep that in mind. Number one keyword that people were looking for was waterfront. Yes, hardly any waterfront properties went up for sale this past year. There was a couple, not the best locations, not the best building block for future potential. And things you have to keep in mind about waterfront properties, it's a little bit different ballgame out there. And of course, you have to talk to a realtor that knows what is what when it comes to sewer service, water service, well service. Keep that all in mind. It's not as simple as it is. BC is a different scenario anyways. Now here's a really interesting factoid. Average age of person searching for a house, yes, a house was still the number one choice, was 50. So that tells me that people are either relocating to the valley for work or they're ready for that second home. They're ready for the vacation property. They are an average age of 50, which means they're usually well established. So they're either moving for business into the valley or, like I said, a second home. And interestingly enough, besides a house, number two is townhouse. My theory that people still want a front door is not going to change. It's not going to change. People want a front door. And don't forget about the garage. Now, here's the interesting thing. 64% of the people searching online were from Alberta. Second home buyers, right? And then the balance, the 35%, was from BC. There was a few little stragglers from the rest of the prairies in Ontario, but that's the majority Alberta is still wanting to come out to cottage country because it's drivable, it's manageable. And, I know people who go to the Shuswap, they go to the Okanagan, Kelowna, Penticton, etc., Vernon, Lake Country. Lake Country is beautiful, by the way. However, if you just want a weekend getaway, the drivability factor is really, really good. And I actually have clients from Edmonton go there for the weekend. Sure, it's 5 hours, but maybe they leave on a Thursday and come back late on Sunday. It's still doable. It's still a doable vacation. Now, the other interesting thing is out of all these people searching online, 35% want to buy. Great. However, 23% want to invest. You're like, what? Investors? That's kind of weird. No, it's not. In Canada, with the rules for short-term rentals, you are still allowed to have a short-term rental in the Columbia Valley because it's all based on population. Now, you still need a permit, you still need to make application, you still have to go through the process, but it is a hot spot for short-term rentals, Airbnb, VRBO, and actually quite surprisingly how many of them there are. Now, occupancy was down this past summer, but let's be fair. We had some forest fires to deal with. We had some weather issues to deal with. And those are deterrents for people because time is precious and they want to spend it wisely. But of course, here's the kicker. Only 10% of the people are planning on selling. Now, how many homes are in the Columbia Valley? 10%? That's not going to be a lot of listings. So the spring market, if you are thinking of selling, please be ready for the spring market. Please be prepared. So let's make a plan because you want to be ready. You have to be organized and be ready. It's not going to be a free-for-all. Do not get me wrong, but my prediction is people sat on the fence this past summer. People were worried about the US election, and I'm not going to discount that quite as of yet, because there's still some speculation on what's going to happen to the Canadian economy when that occurs. But keep in mind, these statistics, this crystal ball, this is the time of year you start looking into the crystal ball to see where people are coming and going and moving, what they're looking for. Invermere market, Columbia Valley market, follows the Calgary market. So if you're following along with what I am talking about in Calgary, you know that's going to trickle down, whether it's good or bad, into cottage country. These insights help us predict the future trends. I'm Diane Plananen with eXp Realty, ready to help you make a move because there's no place like home.